waiting to try and figure out what to do.
Yeah. No, but
Are
it
we?
doesn't go.
When you said go live, is that going live like actually heading out, or there's like because I mean you have to do like 3 different starts to get this thing to work.
We are
You know what?
online right now.
I'm gonna mute my own dang thing right now because now I can hear myself. Obviously, we're live. Welcome everyone. I'm
Yay.
Christopher Mitchell at the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. Hey, Rye, you want to give a quick wave before you disappear? I'm not sure if he's muted me now. He might be in the actual chat. Right, I think. Oh, you know what's interesting? Huh? He's already gone from the video, but we can still see him. Okay. We're trying something new here. I'm very excited. I'm not producing this time. We'll see if my hosting can get any better with a mind fully on it. I'm really excited, but I'm going to start by introducing Deb first. Deborah Simpier has agreed to come back once again, which I really appreciate, to one of these shows and to help us get to the root of what OSFI is proposing. So Deborah, you want to tell people what you do and a quick background, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am CEO of a company called Althea, and we make a platform for a multi-stakeholder vision for the internet. So instead of that one ISP monopoly that owns all of the pipes, all of the infrastructure, and does the service layer on top, we decouple the service and infrastructure layers, and businesses and homeowners can partner to build out infrastructure of networks.
Awesome. And I'm just going to keep bringing you on shows until you bring your dog into the background on one of these things.
He's so big. He'll take up the whole background.
Yeah, I think we'll be good for that. I'm Chris Mitchell. I'm with the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. I run our community broadband networks program. And this is a special kind of thing. As we've been experimenting with YouTube Live, we thought a good effort, a good use of it would be to try to tackle a complex topic in a way that allows people to answer questions directly. Because, as I recall this, Asfi, you had maybe proposed something. I amplified it on social media, and a bunch of people were asking questions then afterward. And I was thinking, well, it'd be nice if we could do this all in real time. So we've invited you here to do that. Isfandiyar Shaheen, currently with NetEquity. Just want to do a very quick introduction, and then I have a little opening blurb I'll read, and we'll start peppering you with questions.
Sure. Hey, thank you so much, Chris. It's a total honor to be here. We're talking to you and Deborah. I think you've become two of my favorite people in broadband. Look, I want to make internet for all happen, and I'm from a finance and investing background. I quit my career from that world in 2016, and I just decided to go all in with everything I know from the finance and investing world to make internet for all happen. And my current thesis is that if we can flood the world with fiber and have that fiber deliver cost-based pricing, we will make internet affordable for the poorest guy in the world. So everything I do is centered around that. And even the stuff I'm going to talk to you is like, that's the why, which has brought me to this current idea, which is a bit crazy, but we're going to talk about it.
It is, if nothing else, audacious. A word that I was just listening to last night as you were talking about how you long for audacity, which I very much appreciate. You already used cost-based pricing. We're going to be talking about some of these things. I mean, at essence, what we're going to be talking about is a new approach that will get fiber out to everyone. It will make it radically more affordable, set up for more innovation, and it will be financed by all of us paying less than we do today, more or less. So it is an audacious goal, but we're gonna dissect it, talk about it. People in the chat can raise questions, and we will reckon with them. But I wanted to kind of sympathize. I wanted to simplify the beginning, just based on reviewing some of the things you've written and talked about in recent months. And so one of the things is that there's a real focus on electric utilities as being a part of this project. We'll talk about how essential they are. There's very much a focus on fiber optics. You are not someone who is interested in wireless at all. And I feel like I've gone back and forth on this quite a bit. You're very interested in open access, and there's a lot of financial mumbo jumbo that we'll be going through. And like I said, I think this is really, well, let me ask you the first easy question that I'll ask you this is, you say you long for audacity. You've set a 10-year goal for yourself. Just briefly outline that.
Yeah, I mean, we want to deploy 10 million kilometers of fiber globally by 2028, and it's crazy, but one of the key enablers of that, as you know, I mean, while we're today going to talk about something not related to it, but the last almost 3 years almost, I've been building this collaboration with Facebook, and in particular, I've been building this collaboration with this guy who I consider like my mentor. Is a guy named Karthik Isfandiyar. So a lot of my thought process comes from him as far as the technicalities are concerned. And he's been designing this robot that can wrap fiber on overhead electrical power lines and do it in a very quick and automated way. And when I look at all the power lines in the world, there's close to 35 million route kilometers that are compatible. And I do believe that we can facilitate 10 million kilometers. When I say 10, but the key thing to remember, Chris, is since I'm not in it to build a company that wants to have maximum market share, my view is like, we want these things to get out. Whether NetEquity is part of that revenue structure or not, that's not very relevant. But I do believe that, by sharing with folks what we've learned, by making these ideas more widely available, we can and we must strive for 10 million kilometers by 2020. And 2028 is just like my 10-year date. So it's just like saying, okay, how are we going to get there? And I understand it's totally nuts right now, but it's kind of worth shooting for. And
and the reason I just wanted to start with that is to give people a sense, like, you're not someone who's coming out of an academic institution saying, oh, well, in theory, we could do this and that. You're someone who's like putting your very promising talents on the line for an audacious goal to try and do it. So I wanted to make that clear. You are someone who is out doing things, which is not to take a slight at anyone else.
Not just, I mean, I want to emphasize and my life savings. I mean, I believe skin in the game is the most important regulator. I mean, I'm not like, I am all in. I'm not a wealthy guy, right? But I'm all in with this because I believe that when you own something, these are not my lines, these are Steve Jobs' line, but when you own something for an extended period of time, your relationship with that whole effort changes. And I've experienced that before, right? And this is not the first time I'm doing something. I mean, this is the nuttiest thing I've done, but in the past, I did help, set up a private equity fund. I did help build a tower sharing company. And I kind of went all in those things as well. And, they worked. I mean, that's kind of why I can live in San Francisco Bay Area now. But I'm a big believer that like, you've got to have downside sharing. Yeah, you've got to, if things don't work out, it's got to hurt. And when that is the relationship that you have with the problem, then the right kind of obsession happens. So yeah, I think I want to say not just time and resources, but like actual money, retirement dollars are like all on the line.
Perfect. And so the reason I want to have Deb on was to just sit there and listen to me asking you questions. I feel awkward that I've given you all of 30 seconds in the first 10 minutes, but we're going to rectify that shortly. The reason I think Deb is going to be really great for this is that, Asfi, you're really proposing to upend how we do things. And Deb, you're also really focused on that too. How can we do things differently? So the first thing to look at is something that is a really interesting idea, which is you're focused on user-owned fiber. What is user-owned fiber and why is that important?
I think, thank you, Chris, and also thank you, Deborah, for being here. I mean, for me, I really wanted her here because, I mean, yeah, I'm actually planning to do one of our first pilots with her, and not just because I think she's phenomenal as far as like her ability to get things done is concerned. So, big fan, Deborah. But coming to user-owned fiber, look, right now we live in a world where, the internet service provider owns the wire and also provides us with the service. But if we own the wire or someone else owned the wire, then anyone could ride that wire to provide us with service. Right now, we've seen this incentive structure play out in Ammon, Idaho, where users own their wires. And that allows other service providers to ride these wires. Why does this matter? As you know, in building internet networks, most of the cost is in construction. It's in this brick and mortar, steel, etc. If that cost is somehow taken care of by another entity, then you really start opening up the market. You lower entry barriers. You make it easier for many service providers to come in and serve you. So I think for me, user-owned networks matter because they give internet users the freedom to choose. But I think another big reason they really matter, Chris, is fiber will make properties more valuable. This is now, if you look at the 2015-16 paper published by University of Colorado Boulder and Carnegie Mellon, they're saying for controlling for all variables, we see a 3.1% jump in a $175,000 property, which is about $5,000. As you know, $5,000 is an amount that can pay for most fiber connections in America, right? So for me, and my take is like, this is now, and going forward, the relevance of fiber will only increase. And why? Because it is a single strand of fiber is 53,000 gigahertz of bandwidth. It's the fastest known data pipe. On a 10-15 year horizon, it's going to, in my opinion, I mean, not just my opinion, based on Nielsen's law, which talks about how user bandwidth doubles every 21 months, fiber will be the only game in town. So if users are owning their fiber, they get freedom to select an ISP, their properties become more valuable, and they get into a cost-based pricing structure that will ensure that they are not at the mercy of an incentive structure that will do things like throttling, charging them unnecessary fees when they blow their data caps, doing things that are, I mean, right now, the current incentive structure, it forces the existing players to artificially create bandwidth scarcity. And I believe the moment we flip that and go towards user-owned fiber or any kind of cost-based pricing, there will be no incentive to choke the pipe. And that's kind of what I want, that people should not have an incentive to choke the pipe, open the pipe, and everyone use it. It's a wonderful pipe. So that's kind of the thinking behind user-owned fiber.
Deb?
Yeah, one of the things that I think when people think about that is, this sounds like a great idea, but I'm just living here in my house. How would I even coordinate that with my neighbors? Who's gonna maintain it? How is that, how's that all going to work? It seems like, just for the regular person that's going to work from 8 to 5, that might be a difficult proposition. I'm curious if you can kind of talk about the roles and.
Yeah. No, I think, and this is something, kudos to you, Deborah, and your co-founder, to like really using the word coordinate, because I think that really hits the nail on the head. Like, this thing we call internet, it's expensive to coordinate. And so, I mean, so my proposal method is that the electric utility, the local electric utility that provides you water, gas, or electric, they are the ones who are going to do the construction and the passive maintenance. I think even before that, I think it's important to talk about very high level, what are the steps that get you internet, right? Like because I mean, most people I think listening would know internet is physical. It's a bunch of wires and tubes and data centers. But a lot of times the roads to your home are not always built, right? So it's important to just like take just a second and think about, okay, what all would last mile, what all would a fiber provider be doing? So in the first phase, construction of this network needs to be done. Somebody has to take care of this network in terms of if there's an actual cut that happens, who's going to take care of it. Then you need to decide, who's going to, what kind of electronics need to be installed on this network to actually deliver you the service. Then you need to have someone who needs to provide you with customer service, that if something goes wrong, who are you going to call? Then you need someone who's going to, send you the bills, do the charging and billing and ticketing and things like that. And then finally you need, and I'm obviously grossly oversimplifying because of call, but then you need to basically take these wires and connect to a middle mile operator. Think of that like another rail track. And you'll need to pay this middle mile operator another toll for accessing basically the infrastructure that they've built. Once these things are done, you can start getting internet service. Now, in terms of coordination, that's one of the roles I'm ready to take up as NetEquity. And but in partnership with electric utilities. Why electric utilities? I think they are a very, or not just electric, water, gas, any utility. I think utilities are a very key stakeholder in all of this because they've got staff, they're already taking care of a bunch of wires. They've already got folks who are like, taking care of stuff. And the interesting thing with fiber is quite beneficial for these utilities. It gives them a monitoring mechanism. And what I'm also proposing is the deal we want to do, it'll give them more revenue. I want to go to a utility and say, I'll give you the construction contract and I'll give you a maintenance contract per household. Take $10 per household. Just do the maintenance. Instead of getting a new set of people to do the maintenance, which is what a typical internet service provider would do, ask your utility to do the maintenance. Similarly, as far as customer service is concerned, that's a huge kind of bug that people have. Why not work with local computer store owners and say, hey, can you take care of 20 to 50 customers? We will give you a contract, and if you don't perform, we will try someone else. Because what do people want? They want to talk to a human after 2 bells. They don't want to have an AI system telling them press 1 for billing and press 2 for cancellation. They want to talk to a human. If we start going local, if we start keeping jobs local, so get the local utility to do the local construction, get the local computer store owner to provide customer service, get the local homeowners to pledge the collateral, and this is kind of this thing kind of then starts happening. So what NetEquity does is it helps bring these conversations together, and this is and I think this is something you do as well, Deborah, with Althea. So we know that this is definitely doable, and obviously, there are going to be challenges. But the pitch to the homeowner is, look, you're already paying, in many cases, 60 odd bucks a month for not great DSL type service. For something similar, you can get fiber, even when it costs like $10,000 per household connected. Because why, right? That's also another thing to understand. See, because when you start giving contracts directly to local people, you know what you're doing? You're shaving away executive salaries. And that's a big chunk of the price that a lot of people pay in their monthly internet bill. Shave that away, and there's another way to reorganize this whole system. So, I want to give you this whole disclaimer, not just to you, anyone listening. This is uncharted territory. It's not been done before. Tim Wu and Derek Slater Tim Wu is a big author. Derek Slater is a policy guy at Google. They wrote this paper in 2008 called Homes with Tails. And that's a lovely paper I would encourage any listener to listen to, where they talked about fiber condominiums. That's where I've taken the concept. And they did an excellent piece of scholarship, and they said there's no reason why this can't be done. Now, it's another matter that it's not being done because incentives have not been there to make this happen. But strictly speaking, in terms of the technicality, in terms of getting it done, there is no reason why it can't be done. And that gives me a lot of hope to say, okay, when scholars like Tim Wu and people like Derek Slater have done this scholarship saying this can be done, then I'm like, I see Deborah, she's kind of already doing a version of it. Okay, like she's doing it with wireless. Can we bring in fiber? And so in my mind, it makes sense. But you know what? Proof will be in the pudding. So hopefully by February, when we're building, then we'll know.
Let's talk about what it would mean practically today. So I would write a check. I would write a check for more than it would cost. I'd pay for one of my neighbors to be able to have a fiber that I owned and not have to be stuck for Comcast, in part because I also expect to be in my home for a very long time. So let's assume I'm in an area in which there's an electric provider that would potentially be interested. They have to be convinced first, right? Like how as you're approaching this and trying to do it in the United States, what is your approach? It seems like it would have to start with that electric provider to get them interested.
That is the case. That is the script in almost everywhere except in Tlaxcala, because I ran into Deborah, but we will still talk to Tlaxcala PUD. So unless I run into a Deborah, the path is go to a utility. So I think like my work in Nebraska, in Sydney, Nebraska, is more, I would say, that's a better example of how things will likely happen. So in Sydney, Nebraska, there's Wheatbelt Public Power District. and I've gotten to know them. And there's a wonderful CEO there, Tim Lindahl. So now this is a very rural area. 3,600 square miles, only 5,000 customers. So starting point is saying, hey Tim, this is what we want to do. Is this something that would be of interest to you, to your neighbors, to your community? And in almost all cases, the answer is, yeah, this is very interesting. And and then after that, the rest of the ball starts rolling. Okay, who are the local contractors who can do the building? Who's the local middle mile provider? Let's talk to the middle mile provider. And the amazing part is, if people are kind of living local in that area, and who are also feeling that they have been deprived of quality internet, people have been amazing. I've really enjoyed collaborating with people in rural America who are not getting the kind of internet they deserve. And so that's kind of where it starts, Chris. Utility is pretty key because, in my mind, if you can't have people who can give you access to the cabinets, to the poles, our plan is in the first build is to just trench it, not to do it on poles. But you do need people who kind of know their way around a city's infrastructure.
I'm curious too, you talk about electrical companies, but there's a lot of municipalities right now that are trying to figure out, how they're going to serve the needs of their constituents, or, sometimes we have, Vermont has special broadband districts that are looking to handle this. Do you think that if you are a municipality that is fairly well funded, that this is still a good option for them?
Not necessarily. This is my if you think about, lots of cooperatives and municipalities have, they are user-owned. It's what I'm talking about isn't that crazy, right? Co-ops are user-owned, and these user-owned pieces of infrastructure decided we're going to build fiber, right? For me, where I want to make a contribution, Deborah, one thing that really kind of, rattled me, I saw this paper, this report by Fiber Optic Association of America. It was done by a consulting firm, Cartesian, and they were basically saying by 2025, half of US households will have fiber. And I was like, dude, come on, we can do better. We need to do 100%. And because, and now
can I just say that I think a lot of people would say that 50% by 2025 is a rosy scenario based on our path currently, business as usual.
And I think this is part of the thing that I'm now interested in, right? Because when I see some of these efforts, they kind of go on for multiple years. There's a lot of coordination, a lot of conversation need to happen. The thing I got curious with was, can we just start building with 10 neighbors? Because one thing I know is if we can just get things started, literally something small, something very local, and basically 4 or 5 neighbors getting together saying, listen, let's just work together, get people to build this fiber, connect to that little socket over there, and we start getting better internet. Can we just do that? That's what I want to enable. And then also, but layer in a structure that allows people to join this network over a period of time. Because see, what ends up happening, or at least what I've observed with co-op fiber projects, is lots of meetings, and sometimes political agendas also come in, sometimes misaligned incentives come in, sometimes indecision comes in. So I'm also thinking, okay, can I force this? Can I give this market a bit of a push and say, come on, let's get started already, right? And since I come from an investing background, I'm saying, let's not rely on any RDOF or a government funding. Let's just do it through bilateral private capital, aligning incentives, use simple human ingenuity to say, look, it takes 20 things and a few contracts and a bit of equipment to get this service. Let's just build. Let's just put our hearts and minds together and let's build. And so for me, it's get this down to let 10 neighbors just connect to a fiber pole, and that'll go fast.
I think that's what's so exciting to me is you have this almost modular or very flexible model where traditionally we've had municipalities or, electrical co-ops have this very, singular model, right? So if it doesn't work, if you can't get the art off, if something falls apart, then that's it, you're done. But, and I think that's one thing I wanted to kind of clarify too, kind of talk about which pieces, you mentioned fiber condominiums, right? So which pieces are co-owned and managed and which properties are owned individually by the user.
Yeah, thank you. I'm like glossing over important details because I also get excited and carried away. I love this stuff so much. So thank you for bringing it back to reality. Just like in a condo, the unit is owned by the individual. So in this case, the strand, and it's going to vary a bit geography to geography. But like, let's say, like now, let me just give you the rural Nebraska example or Sydney, Nebraska example. The wire going from the home to, I would say, to the point where there's a shared trunk, that will be owned individually. But the trunk that goes to the middle mile pop, that will be collectively owned. So the analogy to the co-op is you own the unit, but the elevator is co-owned, or the stairs are co-owned, or the common area is co-owned. And that's basically how this thing will.
In rural areas, there's a lot of these like special districts or co-owned water, right? On the water pipe to be shared. And that's what's so remarkable to me is this is already being done, with other kinds of pipes.
More expensive pipes.
Even I was talking to Karthik yesterday, who's he would not. I hope someday he agrees to interview. He is phenomenal genius when it comes to like these topics. He was telling me, he was like, he currently lives somewhere south of San Francisco. He was like, my homeowners association takes care of this hill, which we all co-pay maintenance for, because if we didn't pay maintenance for, our like neighborhood will get flooded. He lives somewhere in Redwood Shores or Redwood City, like around that area. And I thought that was really interesting. And so, it's like, I think people there are many precedents that exist, but I think the trouble with internet is because it's hidden, it seems like this funky thing. And that's also the thing, Deborah, like when you don't understand how something works, it seems crazy difficult. The moment you get it, it seems trivial, right? Like that's for true, you. Yeah.
Let me jump in for a second, because one of the reasons that we see projects starting off larger rather than smaller is because you want to engineer at one time. Asfi, are you assuming that the utility is basically going to build the network? What I'm trying to imagine is you assume that there's a neighborhood and there's 10 homes in here and 7 of them are interested. Yes. You don't want to build 7 cables today, 1 cable. The outside plant management would get crazy if you don't build it all as once, assuming that eventually everyone will connect, is what I'm assuming. I mean, at the very least, you're not going to do the drops to anyone who's not interested, but the pass has to be built in a way to keep the cost reasonable that you're assuming everyone will participate, and yet you don't know if everyone's going to participate when you're starting with those 10 folks. So how do you reconcile that challenge?
Excellent question, Chris. And it'll vary a lot geography by geography, but like at least in the Sydney, Nebraska area, there's they're like these. We're looking at 2 neighborhoods. This is it's not even a neighborhood. It's like very rural. It's hard to explain, but like there are like 6 or 7 spread out houses in one area, and then there are 20 reasonably close houses in one area. But and in both those cases, there's a fiber pop that is reasonably close to both of these places.
Sorry, I just want to interrupt for a second. Your upstream is glitching. Sorry, you're glitching a little bit. So just you were describing the 2 neighborhoods, and if you just want to pick it up there, and let's hope that your cable company does a better job.
No. I was saying that the plan that we have is. So I'm also talking to a conduit manufacturer to be a partner in this project, but the plan is to connect every home in a particular neighborhood. Now, and this is something I think I want to emphasize, that the geographies I'm looking at, it's like bunch of homes here, bunch of homes here, fiber pop here, fiber pop here. So it's like, for a utility, let's say in the case of wheat belt, so I'll try to explain the geography a little bit to you. So near the Sydney, Nebraska airport, there's like one little area, it's got about 20-25 houses. Now, if we basically string fiber to all of those houses and take them to a fiber pop, that's like one construction job, and that's it. Like, so in that way, you don't have to kind of coordinate with like the entire town. And in this case, we do want to. It's been an ongoing conversation with the homeowners, but we are finding that leaving an opening for every town, for every home to connect, doesn't change the cost that much, but it opens up the option later for these homeowners to join later, and then for everybody's debt per household to come down. My thinking is, build the option to every home, and we can be a bit, I think, generous in terms of how we build. We'll only really find out, Chris, once we like really get down to it. But I think what I'm finding is that, once you've got the property to use as a base, once you've got the household to use as a base, $500 or even $1,000 per household here and there, it doesn't really change the equation. For a typical fiber build, when you try to do it in the vertically integrated structure, take rates start becoming very important because there are salaries to take care of. There are knock related costs to take care of. There are lots of different little costs to take care of that are all baked in. We're saying like, no, try to contract out a lot of those costs. That's the current thinking. But we'll really know, Chris, once we build, which is probably in February.
So I just wanted to clarify, because I got a question from someone who was asking just that. This is a rapidly evolving plan. True to what you were talking about, these things, the plans can sometimes take years to develop. I don't think you were thinking about this 4 months ago.
I was not. In fact, the reason I got to this, I think I'm so glad you mentioned that. I think it's important to share why this is happening. So I wasn't thinking about this even 10 weeks ago. 10 weeks ago, this advisor of mine, she's really bright and really wonderful. She kind of challenged me to say, she said, Asfi, try to do this pilot, this deal that you've constructed. She was like, I don't know all of it, but this deal that you've constructed, try to do it without the Facebook robot. Let's see if you can pull it off without the Facebook robot. And I was like, interesting. Let me try to see if I can do that. So I started talking to Tim Lindahl at Beachbed, and I was trying to pull the deal together, and the deal wasn't coming together because the capex per meter was so high. And so I was like, damn, how do I close this deal? And that's kind of when it hit me. I said, okay, what if we just completely change the way financing is being done? What if we got homeowners to, and so I started playing with this crazy idea, because here's the thing, Chris, all of finance is an imagined reality. All of these are stories. We need this kind of take rate, this much IRR. I'm a finance guy. This is not a science. This is basically stories we've all agreed on. Even the dollar bill is a story we've agreed on. United States of America is a story we've agreed on. We can't touch it. It exists in our shared imagination. And so I was like, okay, what is shared imagination telling us right now? Shared imagination is telling us that a home becomes more valuable the moment it gets fiber. And so I was like, can I harness that value? Can I grab that value and use that value to pay for all of this infrastructure? And the thing that really got me going, the thing that really kind of, I would say, shattered my whole perception. I thought I really knew finance, but then since this pandemic happened and what I saw happening with the stock market, it kind of blew my mind. Because, I saw this world where cash flows were disappearing. There was a huge recession, the world is what it is right now. And the markets were booming. And I was like, why are the markets booming? And there were all these theories about, the Fed stimulus this and the Fed stimulus that. And I was like, it's, people have kind of agreed that that they're going to back the system. And that's kind of when I started thinking, okay, find a way to harness this. And then it was like, if I can harness that, then I can pull my pilot off. Yeah.
If I could just jump in for a second, I feel like to tell the story a little bit differently, people know It's a Wonderful Life, right? And the idea of finance as a fiction is that none of us have all of our money in the bank, but we all agree that it's sort of there. And And so, as long as we don't all go demand it at the same day, that fiction works. So I would just, rather than, I don't want to lose people sometimes, because you talked about magic of the internet. I think a lot of finance is magic to people too. But if you think about it, like It's a Wonderful Life, there's things you can do within this fiction that are interesting.
It is, man, and it's like I reread *Sapiens* by Yuval Harari just a couple of weeks back, and he talks a lot about these imagined realities or these intersubjective realities, and like that's kind of why I also started saying, I was like, there is an intersubjective reality here, like let's push the boundaries a bit and see if we can, because it's not that hard a story, right? Like, think of fiber as a home improvement project. People put fireplaces in their homes all the time. That costs $5,000. People put new bathrooms in their homes all the time. People buy iPhones that cost $1,000.
I'm laughing because I manually excavated my basement and poured a new slab and replaced the heating system, and I'm very familiar with all that. The amount of money I put into that, like, it's great. I'm really excited to have all this stuff, but frankly, I'm spending 10 times as much as that as it would cost to get fiber, and fiber would make my life so much better.
Not now, for 50 years. It'll make your life better. It'll make your kids' life better. It'll make, the video game experience they'll be able to have, the future. Because here's the thing, right? Like, getting a bit more meta and philosophical with you, Chris. Like, one of the reasons I went to fiber and this cost-based pricing structure is because I want to eliminate bandwidth disparity in the world. Internet, getting on the internet, I'm from Pakistan. Internet changed my life. I was a very bigoted kid. I had, very typical Pakistani kid, grew up in Pakistan hating the other. For me, the other were people from India, people from Israel. These are the other in Pakistan. I got onto the internet 1996, started talking to the other and started getting along with the other, hearing their story, being like, interesting, like they're not all that weird as what I was told they were. And it was amazing. And it's like, when I see, like, now I see, like, what will allow people to connect. I think, higher bandwidth systems. I think a lot of people are constrained by language. I think a lot of people are constrained by the English language. But I think, like, when people can just get on screen, there's a reason why TikTok has really kind of taken the world by storm, right? Because you can just, it's easier to express yourself when, you can get on video. And all these higher resolution interactions will be enabled by fat data pipes. And so that's kind of also why, like, I've really gone long on fiber, being like, this is the most future-proof technology. Yes, it's expensive, but find the right way to finance it and find a way to flood the world with it, while ensuring that it's delivering cost-based pricing, while ensuring that, the owner of this network isn't doing abuse to the people who use it. And, at least, like, that's the kind of contribution I'm interested in making. And even I would say, like, not just making, like, I think it is absolutely the right thing for people to, like, invest in these, fiber condos themselves. But I'm willing to go a step further and say, if you are uncomfortable, I am willing to stake you some dollars. I'm willing to give you my money as a loan, obviously, which we'll need to structure, and you'll need to give me some security. But I am totally willing. I believe in this idea so much that I am willing to give you my money for 10 years or so, and help you get this kind of a connection.
Deb, you've been super patient. I just want to say we are going to come back to cost-based pricing. So for people who are confused about that, we just didn't want to run into it at the beginning. But Deb, you've looked like you wanted to burst in several times. I'm impressed at your self-control.
No, Oscar's just saying amazing things that I'm very excited about. One of the things that I was going to say is, what we've seen with user-owned hardware, and it has primarily been fixed wireless, but is this, like, tremendous power that we can unlock by communities sort of collaborating together. And, oftentimes people say, well, I don't think people would want to do that. They don't want to pay for their own fiber. And then I always say, but have you asked them? And I think really, no one's asked. So I think as soon as we start asking, you really will see this sort of, like, network effect of this growing as people realize, that they don't have to be constrained by the old models. They don't have to be constrained by a government solution or a corporate solution for their own, broadband independence.
Yeah, I just want to echo that because I was deeply skeptical of how enthusiastic people would be to engage with this magical stuff. And when I joined the Internet Society out in Waimanalo to help, I mean, I more did photography of documenting what was going on as people learned how to build their own fixed wireless network and connect it. I was fascinated at how engaged they were. People really were interested, and the more that they got the sense they could actually do it, and that there was a lot of the things were made up that they could touch by their hands as they made patch cables. And you see, a grandfather with a grandson who's like 8 or 9, and they're working through the order of the little wires to do the patch cable. And they weren't as excited about the provisioning of the system and the software and stuff like that, but there was definitely so much more engagement and enthusiasm than I expected. I'm much more bullish on it now.
There's a net community effect, I think from the co-ownership and stewardship of as Osby's talking about the fiber condo and that shared elevator, right? So there's and also the value proposition of co-owning things, right? So I think through that stewardship, we make stronger communities as well. Asfi, you're muted.
But let me ask you, Asfi. One of the questions I feel like people come back to then is, and let's talk about Wheatbelt. You're going to connect 70 homes. What ISP wants to bother dealing with 70 homes, particularly as we'll detail at the low prices you want them to charge?
Fewer homes, not 70 homes. I mean, we probably do 70 in Deborah's area, but even fewer homes. No, absolutely. Look, at least in Nebraska's case, I mean, the latest, the middle mile so I think it's also important to ask, what all does an ISP do? Once they've done the installation, okay, what all do they do, right? Beyond customer service, beyond buying the electronic equipment, beyond provisioning the PON network. So, after that comes a bunch of layer 2 stuff, right? So IP addresses need to be assigned and things like that. So at least in Nebraska's case, the good thing is that the middle mile operator, Nebraska Link, is saying, look, we can take care of a bunch of that IP address assigning thing for you. So, at least over there, it sounds like, they'll, and I want to be upfront, this is something I'm still learning. I mean, things like DHCP and what is a NAT and what is assigning IP addresses, the difference between IPv4 and IPv6. I'm very new to this stuff. But my two thoughts over there are, one, currently we are seeing a path where the middle mile operator can help us basically just get on the highways, and we won't need an ISP because, again, it goes back to what all does an ISP do? Because we've taken care of the customer service, we've taken care of the physical maintenance, we've taken care of the financing, we've taken care of the construction. So you have to ask, okay, then what's left, right? A bunch of layer 2 stuff that's left. Second thing to consider, and I just learned this morning because I'm talking to a really seasoned guy. He's telling me about looking into ISP resellers. They are like the MVNO brothers of ISPs. This is the first time I'm hearing about them, but
right. And just to be clear, mobile virtual network operators. So like the Crickets, the Republics, Google Fi, Ting, my favorite one. Yeah.
Exactly. So for me, I think that's still something that needs to be explored. Personally, I am against the idea of giving exclusivity to one service provider, even if they are a non-incumbent. I have a moral problem with exclusivity. I have a moral, and it's a compromise, I may have to make at some point to make a deal bankable, but I'm not ready to make it yet. I'm not ready to give up, because ultimately, and the thing that I also struggle with is the Ammon model allows, a very quick and easy solution to select ISPs from your web browser, but then it comes with some added costs. It comes with some added cost on the consumer premise equipment. It comes with some decisions that are different in the network architecture, and those are slightly different from mainstream. I haven't fully gotten comfortable with that. I don't want to get down into those weeds like active Ethernet versus GPON, but those are some to play. I say all this to say, Chris, that I am optimistic about finding partners who will help us solve this piece of saying, okay, you have taken care of so many jobs between this little layer 2, layer 3 thing. Let's see if we can find an elegant solution. If we can find, and because I recently learned something else, and I can't name the company, but I've learned about a massive company that operates a massive network, and they do it without a NOC. NOC is Network Operation Center for listeners. And, again, can't name the company, but they've done it through a lot of automation. And that's also kind of now gotten me interested, being like, you're operating that without a NOC, like, holy crap, right? Like, I need to look into that, right? What does that mean? What does that entail? Ask the questions, because again, it's like, it goes back to the why and the motivation, right? It's about like, yeah, what I've been told, Chris, in this whole thing is that like, solve the construction and financing problem. That's like the really big, ugly chunk. And I feel like we have a good handle on that. So the rest of the thing.
Yeah, but so this is maybe I could be slow on this. Trying to figure it. Don't get so angry, Asfi.
No. Sorry, I was doing a stretch and I dropped my phone. Sorry about that.
So someone on your network decides to threaten the president. Who does law enforcement go to talk to about that? So there's a new threat There's a new threat, and who's sort of doing protection to make sure that
Yeah, I discussed exactly this topic with this guy who's, helping me understand things like that. So his view was that if that happens, what's happening, at least with the Nebraska link conversation, is they will be assigning one IP address to the co-op or the condo, and then there will be an NAT, and I may be screwing up my terms here, but basically,
network address translation. It's pretty simple.
So what will happen? This is if one of those guys is doing something weird, the whole network's going to get shut down. The whole network's going to get shut down unless we find a way to create systems that can tell our middle mile partner that it's exactly this particular one. It's this.
Right, but that's the ISP, right? I mean, that's what I'm getting to.
I don't have answers there, Chris. I don't know. I don't know enough about that world. I don't know enough about the cost structure of that layer 2, layer 3 software type automation that needs to happen to give you a firm answer at this stage. That's definitely something that we need to figure out. I mean, my worst case scenario is that that NetEquity ends up assuming that role of creating one NOC that is now serving multiple fiber condos and basically providing this layer 2, layer 3 service. My general approach with NetEquity is, I don't want to build anything if it already exists. My view is try to push the limits of outsourcing, hence this idea of working with local computer store owners to do the customer service and things like that, local utility to do the maintenance. If I end up facing a situation where this is absolutely essential, then I raise money and I build that, right? Let's
move on. I think that's a really good answer, is to say that this is one of those areas. And I just want to say in the chat, someone had noted IPv6, but I feel like this isn't just necessarily a technological answer. You need a person that is going to potentially have legal help to determine if the government comes and wants to get information on a user, whether or not the government can access that.
Yeah,
so we'll just, Deb, if you want to have an answer, go ahead. But I'm content also to say that we may not have an answer to that part, and we can move on to areas where we do have answers for.
Well, my understanding, and Asfi, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're not reinventing internet. We're just decoupling the ISP layer from the infrastructure layer. So how things are done currently with Kalia and with the law enforcement and all of that will still be the same with NAT, just the way it always is with other ISPs. It's just that the infrastructure layer will be on, so that aligns the incentives better. But my thinking is, it's that piece of it is going to be very similar to how it's currently addressed.
You are spot on, Deborah. And the reason my answer is choppy is because I still don't understand very well how quite fortunate to have people like you and people like Justin now kind of on Slack or Discord, which you guys use to be able to talk to, because, that's a wonderful thing about these community-driven projects. You can talk to brilliant people. Like your co-founder, your CTO, he's phenomenal. Like I listened to his talk, I was like, dude, like, good on you. So, having access to a guy like that, I'm like, okay, I'll figure this thing out in time.
But I happened to notice that one of the photos you have from you, I assume at Wheatbelt, has a person in the photo I won't identify who's from an ISP who seemed to be pretty much enjoying himself and having the conversations you were having. So you're having some of these conversations.
Look, no, you're talking about Matt. Look, Matt, Chris, Matt has been an amazing friend. He's the one who introduced me to that list you and I are part of. He's the one, he totally took me around, even though, and this is what I've said it before, this is what I love about rural America and traveling to rural America, working in rural America, that even a wireless ISP like Matt, who also recognizes that in some ways, I could be annoying, or like things that I'm doing could potentially be annoying for his business at some point. But he's still like, look, dude, I like your intentions. I like kind of what you're trying to do. Like, let me see if I can be of help. And then also let me share with you. So, I think it's interesting you brought him up, because I also want to emphasize, I think we often put, corporations or ISPs or WISPs or MNOs in pockets and say, oh, these people behave like this. I think people are generally very good. I think it's incentive structures that makes them do certain things. But I think that, the ability to like sit and listen and really like connect with each other and like connect on the fundamental story, I think that's like really powerful. And it gets to these situations where, a wireless ISP in rural Nebraska is like willing to be supportive and collaborative and say, yeah, like, I hear you. And on the other side as well, being like, yeah, I hear you.
I think there's also like a potential, like you said, for that alignment of incentives, right? Where you have a wireless ISP or an ISP who expand their market share with very little capex or no capex, because the users are putting in their own money.
I was actually going to say that, that I think this is a great point that you're raising, Deborah, because I think like the Althea system or even the WISP system was very complementary. Like we're building a bunch of wires that are fatter pipes, but like there's no reason why, if somebody wants to install an antenna and then serve like 3 more households so that the cost base comes down even further, go for it. Like we are not kind of going to go there and police people and say, no, you can't use 60 gigahertz or you can't use 30 gigahertz, it's fiber or bust. No, it's just like, look, this is a fatter pipe and, it gives you a pathway. But beyond that, yeah, absolutely. Like, use more wireless, like serve more people, but serve people, don't like, don't extract, like don't call them captive customers. Like this is what annoys me about terminology in business, right? A lot of investors who want to be in FTTH, they get excited about, oh, we'll have captive customers who'll pay us an annuity for 20 years. And I'm like, dude, come on. Don't like, that's not cool.
But the vision, I use a lot of wireless. But all wireless, like even something like Starlink, you're going to need your gateway backed by fiber. You need fiber. So there's this beautiful vision where we come in and bring all of this user-owned fiber, building out the edges far as there. And then what I'm really excited about too is then we can take that fiber and then go fixed wireless. You can put LTE on the end of that. That's user-owned. And this is where we really have this, where we can get those numbers and we can really build that vision that you're thinking about. I think it all kind of works well together.
I think it does.
So let's as we're almost an hour in, I feel like some of us would be willing to talk about this for the rest of the evening, but
I want to all the time, man. I'm so glad, by the way. Thank you so much, both of you, for like talking to me. It's like it's therapeutic, talking to both of you. So I really appreciate it.
There are those who think of talking to me as like a punishment. So I appreciate that.
Anyone like that.
The one of the things that that you've said is cost-based pricing, and I feel like in my heart that this is something that I'm really interested in. But at the same time, I feel like when you're talking about driving the cost down so low, if you're looking at just an ISP, even if they don't have CapEx, if they're looking at only a few dollars of revenue per user, they're going to look in other lines of business because they're just going to want, I think, more revenue per user.
Sorry. This should be very clear about that.
Mm-hmm.
Cost-based pricing is only applied to internet infrastructure, not the service. Okay, like ISPs.
So talk about what that is in general. What is cost-based pricing, and people can just forget that my example.
Absolutely. I mean, I understand market clearing prices, right? Like, but my also thing is like, you pay $9 for Netflix, that's a whole lot of service. You pay $8 for Amazon, that's a whole lot of service. Why can't you get ISP service for $10 a month? I mean, come on, like, you can get Netflix for $10. You can get layer 2, layer 3 automation for that. Like if somebody's telling me I can't, I'll find you VC investors who are willing to back that.
I love this side of you. I love it right now.
so the thing is, when I say cost-based pricing, it's for infrastructure, it's for the wires, it's for the construction, it's for all of that. But what that means, Chris, is, Chris, almost all infrastructure except telecom infrastructure is under cost-based pricing. What cost-based pricing means is that exactly what it says, that pricing is a function of how much it costs to deliver a service. But for cost-based pricing to become feasible, someone other than equity investors need to assume demand risk. This is what happens with electric utilities. When an electric utility builds infrastructure, one of the reasons why electrical infrastructure is a lot more pervasive than fiber, even though electrical infrastructure costs way more than fiber, is because the rate-based structure is almost agnostic to population density. The rate-based structure is saying, if you invest $10,000, I will let you earn a return on those $10,000. That's kind of what the rate-based structure does. So cost-based pricing is this idea that, what happens in a cost-based pricing structure is some third party basically guarantees equity investors a certain return. So the moment returns are fixed, what happens is, as usage increases, price per user keeps on declining. A way to understand this is in the context of availability payment schemes that are used to finance highways, which are even more capex intensive than anything that we've seen. The way these availability payment schemes work is that they basically say that a government body is going to guarantee a certain return if the network remains on. And so in the initial years, let's say traffic is not enough to cover the entire revenue requirement. In the initial years, whatever the shortfall is gets covered by some government body, like a universal service fund or some treasury. But in the outer years, as traffic grows, the price paid by each car, if you will, or by each customer, it keeps on declining. The reason cost-based pricing on fiber is so unbelievably magical and why I'm so obsessed with it is because of the size of fiber. The 53,000 gigahertz of bandwidth in one strand and one cable having about 48 strands. When you do cost-based pricing on something like this, you can basically drop price almost indefinitely as the number of users increases, because marginal costs are very, very, very low to accommodate more users. So that, in a nutshell, is what cost-based pricing is. The opposite of it is value-based pricing, which is what I would say most of the telecom industry and ISPs are in, where they don't, and what happens in value-based pricing is equity investors assume demand risk. So what does that mean? In the initial years, you might be incurring losses, right? And that's kind of why so many investors are wary of going to rural areas, because they're like, we won't find enough population density. So we won't find enough of a take rate. So why go there? We can't earn a return. We can't keep burning money. But what then ends up happening is, eventually when they start making money, now because they took the risk in the first place, they have no incentive to reduce prices, or they have no reason to reduce prices, because that's not the deal they signed on. And that's in a nutshell what it is. But I think it's also just very important to talk about one important piece of regulation, which was 1934's Telecom Act, which just kind of shaped telecom globally in a big way. And that just assumed that, look, there will be this market failure in rural areas. And the remedy for that market failure was that we're going to take a tax from urban areas, call it the Universal Service Fund, use it to subsidize builds in rural areas. unfortunately, not just in America, but world over, this whole scheme didn't work out all that well. And so, that's kind of part of the challenge that we see today. But there are fiber builds. Palapa Ring in Indonesia is a good example. Kentucky Wired is a bad example because it got a lot of bad press, but the deal and the idea totally makes sense. I mean, I believe they will complete their network in time. It'll prove like a good decision, but I know it became highly politicized. So I say it with that caveat that Kentucky Wired was perhaps not like, yeah.
So I have a couple of other questions, and I wanted to give Deb a chance also. Did you want to? Okay, you're good.
I'll try to be more brief too. Sorry, I need to like.
I think you've done a good job. I mean, this has, I think, been exactly what we were looking for.
Yeah.
So is there an urban approach to this? In that there's not. Is that I mean, in part, well, let's look at cities that own their own electricity, at least. You don't think even there, potentially?
No, see, the thing is, Chris, it's like
apartments though. What if like an actual condo? What if an actual condo?
Yes, I think the reason I kind of gave my gut reaction is because, see, like, people have to be hurting for them to do radical things. Like,
yeah. Let me take you up to Maine, and we'll just tour the Charter Spectrum territory.
So I mean, yeah, okay. If people are hurting, then I can tell you this thing can be. I mean, I'll give you Tim's story. I'll give you Tim's statement right from yesterday. And it's so interesting what happens once you get it, once the idea is primed, right? So he was like, man, I have just learned I live 200 yards away from a fiber pop. And, I can't believe I've been paying $70 for DSL for like 5 years. He was like, he's kind of impatient now. He's like, I think I might just self-pay, connect to that and pay for the whole dedicated internet access, $300 a month myself. He's like, I'm just going to do it myself. And I was like, dude, like, come on, let's like work with me. We've got a pilot going. Like, we also want to make sure that, we do the right PR with this. But the point that I'm making is like someone like Tim, who's kind of obviously frustrated with 10 megabits DSL that is very choppy. He's like, yeah, I'm kind of in. But if I think about my neighborhood, I'm in San Francisco. I don't know. I'm like, but if someone's hurting, and also I think, yeah, so.
No, San Francisco's not hurting. You're right. I shouldn't say it. So there's lots of problems. San Francisco tested this though, right? They considered a municipal network, and it proved that San Francisco is uniquely not interested in this sort of a thing, in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, in time, maybe, as in my view is like, and that's kind of why I'm like excited about, Flatskenai and Sydney in Nebraska is like, I feel like these are kind of somewhat edges. And, so I'm like, maybe, Chris, once we have really like ironed out a lot of things, see, there's obviously a lot of skepticism that's going to be at play. Like, how will this work? Will it work? It's not been done, and like, things like, have you built a network before? Like, no, I haven't. I've basically just raised money. I know how to do deals. I haven't built a network before. So there's going to be all of those things. But I think like once it comes to fruition, which I'm very confident it will, then I think maybe, cities can look into it. I also feel like, I was initially about to say that, investor-owned utilities won't get interested, but lately I found a mega investor-owned utility that's very interested. Can't name them. They like serve a bunch of different states, but they've basically said like, if this thing works, we wanna like roll this thing out in a big way. So I don't know, man. Like, let's see. I'm not going to mess with urban for sure.
Go ahead, Deb.
Okay, so what I wanted to say is that what we have seen in a lot of urban areas where there is a high need is that, and the municipalities can't hit this either because they can bring fiber to the building itself, but the infrastructure within the building may not be municipally owned. So you have a lot of situations where you have fiber on the curb or even fiber to the building or passing by the building, but the infrastructure within that building, old copper, right? Old, really poorly maintained actual in-building infrastructure. So I see a great potential for landlords to invest in their own in-building wiring, to bring that up to spec to fiber. And this is a financial structure that could work well for that. So I do think there is actually a great need in urban areas as well. It's sometimes not talked about very much.
Yeah, let's play this out for a second, right? Because Asfi, you're good at numbers in your head, right? So, well, then pick your phone up off the floor and turn on the calculator. but let's talk about let's say the average cost for a connected home in my neighborhood is $2,000 of work. Okay. And so most of the people in my neighborhood are paying between $70 and $250 for telecom, which includes YouTube, includes like the cable services. Now, if you were to basically tell people who only want internet access, look, and I'm guessing that you would agree that we could figure out a way to make this work. We'll guarantee that for 5 years, you're going to be paying less than $45 a month, for the service. We'll do a contract with you. You have to agree to pay 10 years worth of service at $45 a month. But we can deliver that. I feel like that to me seems like something that you would be able to make a model on. I mean, I just can't imagine that a lot of my neighbors wouldn't be interested in that sort of thing. Because then not only that, but I mean, like, I'm mad that YouTube TV raised the price, but you're talking about these families now are going to be paying $100 rather than $220 a month for that same service. It seems like there's got to be a path there somehow.
No, dude, there is, and I think it's also like I mean, there's obviously the case of my own mental bandwidth limitations, and also my own balance sheet limitations. How many pilots can I pay for? Because what's been very interesting in my whole conversations with the Nebraska, with Tim and folks in Sydney area is that I basically went in with this whole thing saying, look, I'll pay for this. I've created this financial product, which is like, low cash interest, but at the end of 10 years, it pays me like a bigger payment. But people kind of went from that's interesting to I'll just pay for it myself, or I'll just take like a home equity loan myself. And like, if you can coordinate, then brilliant. And so, look, I think that, particularly in areas where we're talking $2,000 per household connected, yeah, man, like you can absolutely, if you get your local utility on board, to say, look, I need you to take care of these wires. I need you to do the construction, and I need you to connect them to this particular socket, right? And obviously, there's an assumption here that the middle mile provider is going to play ball, right? Like, not all middle mile providers will play ball, right? Some middle mile providers are nicer than others, and I don't want to get into which one's which, but some are nicer than others. So, there's going to be that whole particular piece to think about. Which in time we believe we can also fix with this whole Facebook robot thing that I'm talking about. And even without the robot, I think there's a way to build middle mile networks that offer cost-based pricing. So short answer, Chris, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, look, hey, if you want to start a fiber condo in your neighborhood, let me know, man. I'm a fan of yours. Why not? Like, let's do one more. Like, I plan to drive to Klaxkanai anyway. I guess Minneapolis isn't all that far. So, I don't know, another 10 hours, why not? I mean, me and my little Mazda are going to go across the United States to all these areas. But yeah, we could.
Absent the pandemic, man, I would give you at the very least a nice couch, but we'd probably do something better for you too.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, thank you. But I would encourage you to, socialize this idea with your neighbors, because, yeah, I mean.
So I was just. And it's your ticket. I was just distracted because I was trying to. I know Travis is actually was just texting me, and I would have loved to have got him in here just to get a quick sense, because I feel like. If it's $2,000 per home, does it matter who the utility is? If you can have a private company that would be willing to do that at $2,000 a home, like what else does the utility bring?
So, look, Chris, again, I have no love for the utility. Part of the reason is because I've just spent too much time with the utilities, peddling that robot thing, right? But look, again, I say break down the jobs to be done. What's the job to be done? Somebody has to install, somebody has to take care of the wires. If the construction company is saying, I will take care of the wires, I will make sure that if something gets cut, I'm going to send someone who will resplice and fix it. And similarly, if some splitter in the GPON network is not working or the OLT is not working, I will do whatever it takes to fix it, right? Or the equipment provider, Calix or Ubiquity or whoever I'm working with, it's about just like writing down all the jobs all the things that need to be done, and then assigning someone responsible. I mean, I totally contract out every task that is associated with delivering internet service, and I believe it will be more efficient because at a minimum you're not paying executive salaries in that, right? So, and those are kind of sizable. If you look at any average telecom company or any average telecom infrastructure company, their C-level is pretty well paid. It's one way or another, you pay them, one way or another, you pay their shareholders. And at some point you have to start asking, like, what is the cost of that coordination? Can I re-coordinate what they do? And is that worth it?
Mm-hmm.
My take is obviously yes. And I know you're in the same camp too. But I also think, people like you and me and Deborah and Tim, it's like, that's why I was really looking forward to this conversation because, I think like, if we can kind of, just step up a bit and show that these things can be done. I love the story of this 4-minute mile. There was this whole thing about the 4-minute mile, the 4-minute mile. One guy ran the 4-minute mile, then everybody ran the 4-minute mile. It wasn't a big deal anymore. I do believe if we can make a couple of these things happen, and it's also important for me, like, I'm a big fan of America. I think I'm very bullish on America, very long on America. And one thing I often look back to is America was way behind in the electrification race relative to Soviet Union in the 30s. And in fact, like in the early 20s, it was Soviet leaders were saying, communism is electrification of the whole country. America was nowhere in the electrification race. But there was this amazing alignment of incentives, this decentralized system that kind of really got like America going. And some of those co-ops were as small as 8 people. And they were talking about energized lines that can kill you. We are talking about a passive wire. Like, come on, photons don't kill you. Electrons can kill you. So, I just feel like it's like some of it is in our heads. And I do think we can, we should do it, man. You should definitely.
Yeah, no. So let me just say that I really appreciate that. We're going to be wrapping this up pretty shortly. Deb, if you have to leave before then we really appreciate you jumping in and being part of this conversation. I just wanted to bring in Travis for a quick sort of sense of, as someone who is operating as an ISP, I'm just curious, and I'm not sure, Travis, you want to react more to my pushing OSFI into the urban areas or in general, but you gotta go.
Hello, guys. How are you? I've enjoyed your conversation.
1 second, Travis. Sorry. Just 1 second.
I wanted to say thank you for having me on, and thank you, Oscar. This is a great conversation. And yes, I'm going to leave it in Travis's capable hands.
Thank you, Deb.
Right.
Thank you, Deborah. See you very soon.
Travis, go ahead.
How are you guys today? So I found the conversation interesting. I guess I just wanted to potentially add some color to it, as we have put fiber in front of about 150,000 homes in the city of Minneapolis. So we've been doing it for the last 10 years. And I mean, there's some.
Sorry, Travis, 150,000?
Yeah, bypassing. We've gone past.
Oh, passings. Okay, thank you.
Passings. So here's I guess some of the issues that I potentially see from an actual operational standpoint.
Yeah.
Somebody has to own the customer. If you don't own the customer, you will have a tremendous amount of potential short-term and long-term issues. So a completely outsourced model could be very challenging for you in practicality, because that end user that is paying you money in one way or another is going to want to have somebody to call and somebody to get resolution. Everyone that was on this call is probably reasonably technically savvy. It is amazing to me, the rest of society. Just a small tangent, just for a second. We had a lady, really nice lady, but she had to plug in an Ethernet cable, and it was terrified to do so. So we sent somebody out to do that for her. So there's technical competence.
But I think, Travis, I think that's the local utilities role in that case.
No, that's not the utilities role.
But
That's not the utilities role. It's the local computer store owner's role. The utility is literally taking care of the utility, and what we are doing is literally taking care of the wires the fiber cable. But things like ONT stuff or consumer premise equipment, the idea is to work with a local.
And how does that? Who pays for that call?
The condominium association. It's very similar to like a homeowners association. So this will become like a mini co-op. It's this mini co-op that will end up actually doing the contracting as well with the middle mile operator, because the middle mile operator is also saying, I don't want to send you like 50 bills. I want to send you one bill. I don't want to deal with 50 people. So in terms of that aggregation, that will be done by the co-op, which initially I will be helping manage if I need.
So, okay, let me play devil's advocate then. So you've got a very challenging customer and you have to roll your truck out there 6-8 times. Who's going to pay for that?
So that, well, currently it's in the, that's a great question. I mean, currently we are thinking
I'm not saying we necessarily have to have answers. These are things to consider.
Because I think, I mean, from what you just said, Asfi, I think it's the condo association that is developing probably a retainer type contract with some sort of local person who is handling those sorts of things. That's the goal.
So currently we are offering a electric utility $10 per month per household to take care of the truck rolls and the wire cuts, etc. And the thinking is that this $10 per month per household is covering the needs for truck rolls and things like that. So the electric utility is the water utility is the one that's taken care of.
Well, I think truck roll might be an ambiguous term. I think the way Travis is using it is maybe an internal Wi-Fi issue or something like that, or it may not be like a physical outside plant.
I think that demarcation is important, right? So basically, I mean, and again, I also want to share, why these decisions are coming out. The ISPs I've interviewed, they say like vast majority of issues arise at the customer premise equipment. They're not so much with like the fiber wires we've laid or the electronics we've laid. It's stuff inside the house. And so I plan to break these into 2 different contracts, get the electric utility to do the passive maintenance, which is, fiber cut happens or something happens, like go and fix it. But if there's something inside the house which is problematic, then do a contract with a computer repair owner in that town and say, can you take care of these 20 homes for $10 a month? The deal is you got to pick up their call in 2-3 rings if they call you, and if you don't do that, there are 3 other computer store owners who we could go to.
Sure. Just be cognizant of the fact that you're guilty till proven innocent in this particular model. The vast majority of the issues are with the customer's equipment, but the customer doesn't know that. They just know that the internet doesn't work.
Yeah.
So when we talk about a delineation, I don't know if it's going to be quite as convenient as that, because you will live and die by your Google star rating. And if you get a bunch of people on there saying that this service sucks, and you're like, well, it wasn't us, it was you, they won't believe you. They'll believe the homeowner every time.
I think Travis, I think that's a really good point. I'll also just remind you that I think this is more analogous to the work you're doing in Wisconsin, where probably people have one choice, and not your work in Minneapolis, where people have multiple choices.
Well, but at the end of the day, even in Wisconsin, the buck stops with me. So it's somebody that owns it, and I am not afraid to spend more money to make a customer happy than maybe the entire revenue that I will get off that customer for 3-4 years, simply because their voice in social media is louder than my voice. So there needs to be effective breakage in this model, because again, they're mad, their thing doesn't work, they don't understand why it doesn't work. It's the big delta between electricity, water, and internet. And when you lump them all together, electricity and water, even though they are more, they're complex to deliver, they're very understandable. People grew up with them, and it just generally works. Where when you rely on the customer's equipment, especially equipment maybe they bought 10 years ago to perform, it's a big expectation.
Cool. So Travis, I don't want to get too hung up on that. I think you get a couple other things.
What? Sorry.
No, I think you had a couple of other items that you were going to roll into, but I forced you to hold on.
Oh, yes. So the other one that I thought was interesting is this concept of getting your neighbors on board. With flipping we tried that model, and here's what you have to ask yourself: why do half of people that we have rent a router from us for $9 a month? A router that costs like $200.
Right.
Because Americans are so indoctrinated with this payment model. Have you ever gone to buy a car? Go for it a month. And so the concept of spending thousands of dollars for internet or going to a competitor, which maybe isn't quite as good for $50 a month, everybody's going to take the $50 a month program, except for the computer nerds, that really see the value or even understand what a fiber cable is. I can't tell you the number of people I've talked to that say we sell fiber, and they're like, in my cereal? I mean, they don't know what it is. So I would say
I'm working on that. That's my job.
Don't get drunk on the technology. I mean, I'm totally drunk on the technology, but you need to be able to articulate that to the average homeowner and have a price point that is advantageous for them to come onto your system. And trying to front end load all the costs to them. We used to charge $100 setup fee. We had half the amount of sign-ins. Now we have a zero setup fee. We get everybody. Yeah. So I'm just some additional color for that.
Yeah, and I think
I would hate to see you run down the road on that model for a long time. I think you'd become very.
Yeah, and what I want to just respond to is like the primary product I'm actually going in with is saying zero upfront cost to you.
Okay.
Financial product where I believe that your home will become so valuable that it'll pay me back. But then we need to do this deal where you need to sign this agreement with me, which is where you're basically pledging some of your collateral. So that's the kind of the alternative. But I totally hear you, Travis. I mean, I think like asking them to pay upfront is definitely not something that would be like the first conversation.
If you do it for free, if you hook them up for free, I'm confident to say you'll get half the people. If it's like our Wisconsin model, where we get 85% of the people because their choices are so terrible, even in a metro area, you should be able to get half of it as being a good, competent alternate.
It's free, but they have to like sign on this contract that I've designed called a shared appreciation note, which is basically like a shared appreciation mortgage. But it is basically like a very low cash interest loan that pays an upside 10 years later if the property value rises. That's the legal contract that I've gotten designed. But what so far happened, at least in one of the areas where we're having these conversations, is that initially, obviously, there was a lot of excitement behind the contract, and because the thing was that we could potentially just get this like we can get faster internet without our bill changing. But over time, as people have kind of understood it more, they're like, I can get like lower interest rate from my own home equity loan, so I might just do that. So there is also like this interesting journey.
I'm concerned you're putting too big of barriers in front of you, because the average person will not understand that.
Yeah.
Well, I do think that this is something that's actually come up in the chat. Is like this is not happening in a vacuum. There needs to be a kind of like a local group that is educating people, is answering their questions and things like that, like a local organizing effort. I think that's
how could it be different than what we're doing, where we say we'll hook you up, we'll charge you $50 a month. That's the end of the conversation. Why does there have to be all this other reverse indirect mortgage and now we have?
Well, the reason is
I'm just curious.
Let me answer it, and then Asfi, I'd really like to hear you answer it, because what my guess would be is that there's a number of electric co-ops that simply do not want to go out and raise money to take the risk themselves. They would rather have the risk be taken, the risk to the extent there is a risk. They'd rather have the money coming from the people that are within their area, so that they just don't have to be involved at all.
No, so I think this is why, Chris. I mean, if you look at the kind of places that I want to do this in, are places where it costs $10,000 to connect a household, right? Like these are very rural places, and these are places where the most existing ISPs are kind of struggling to like make a financial case work over there. So my take is like, yeah, I mean, if your town has multiple service providers and, there is someone who's willing to say, hey, it's $50, here's fiber internet, I have zero interest in going into that town. This is more like saying, um, towns that are like pushing this for $4,000 household connected, $5,000 household connected, $6,000, like the more rural areas, like find a financing structure that is able to amortize the cost of financing over 20, 30 years. Like bring non-telecom capital to the table that is able to deliver cost-based pricing to the users of a fiber network. Hence, all this circus is happening because this is not being done to create an ISP or a telecom business. This is being done to set the stage so that fiber networks can deliver cost-based pricing so that the poorest guy in the world can someday afford internet access. So that's why all of this is being done in the first place.
In our last 2 minutes, let me just say that for folks who may be either now tuned in or later watching it in an international context, I think one of the other important things to notice is that a lot of the value that you're creating for is actually in the electric system itself. We've not talked about that at all. There's been arguments in the past that I believe are true, that if we ran fiber to everyone's home, we could pay for it solely from the savings of not constructing new electric generation plants, because the cost of building new electric generation is so great that having demand response, the ability to basically change when someone's air conditioning turns on or off, you could better use existing power, and you would save so many billions of dollars from avoided costs of not building new plants. It would pay for the fiber infrastructure over a period of years. And in the US, we're past that point, I think, but in other parts of the world, that could still make a lot of sense. And you could really unlock a lot of value with fiber in this way, particularly when the electric utility is in control of it.
Not just electric utilities, Chris, but I mean, even farmland, even agriculture properties. And, that's kind of why I went to utilities in the first place, right? Because I know that it is not economically feasible to build internet infrastructure in rural areas. And so the first hypothesis was, can we get non-telecom revenues to subsidize cost of fiber deployments in rural areas by making those things more efficient, by making utilities more efficient, by making farms more efficient? Yes, we can, because data allows you to make better decisions. Fiber is a very fat data pipe. If that pipe is delivering value to lots of different properties in different ways, and so long as I have that ASFI stack, right? That people are hungry for services are hungry for infrastructure, and so on and so forth. Value has to be translated into a contract, into a bankable contract. When that happens, there is financing that gets unlocked. So for me, there's a very similar interest with farmland. And right now, there's like some very interesting farmers in the Sydney, Nebraska area who Tim knows, who've basically self-financed fiber from their farm to the nearest fiber POP, because they're saying we're getting phenomenal benefit. I think one guy quoted me $35 per acre per month of benefit as a result of making this deployment. And so my take is, just like homes will become more valuable when they get fiber, farmland will become more valuable when they get fiber. Like, find a way to bring them into the contract, find a way for them to share the cost of this deployment, but set it up in an incentive structure that opens up these pipes to people who want to use it, and hopefully in a way that causes prices to keep declining. Because we take these privileges for granted, but half the world remains unconnected. In my country's case, 60% of my country remains poorly connected. And so I think that's kind of the so I think I definitely think, like, the moment we start finding better partnerships with with adjacent industries, with healthcare, with education. I mean, forget very things that are out there. There's a lovely partnership that, Chris, that happens between edge data centers, microgrid operators, and electric utilities and fiber developers. Now, again, that's another thing that I want to work on, and I'm working with somebody who can help me pull this off. But again, these kind of collaborations start spreading the cost in a way that makes these systems more accessible. So
it brings us full round. I want to wrap the show there. I want to thank Travis. Thank you for coming on. I'm really appreciate you adding in. No. I think it's valuable.
Yeah, this was amazing. I really appreciate the comment about owning the customer, about the delineation, and also I want you to know, I really appreciate the feedback. B, like, yeah, look, this is a wacky thing, and I mean, like, we'll probably get bashed quite a bit when we try it, but
not the wackiest thing I've talked about today.
But and the more we learn from people like you who are actually building, running, deploying networks, the greater chance we have of like not doing some obvious screw ups. I'm sure there will be plenty. So I really, really appreciate it, and I hope to time, if it's okay to just see how this thing is going and get feedback.
Yeah, I'm just a very practical kind of, we dig in the dirt and hook customers up. So it's and you're going to meet every type of person that exists on the entire technical arc. So just put a whole bunch of Starbucks gift cards in your car and get ready to make peace with a lot of angry people. So
no, man, absolutely. I hear you, and yeah, that's the kind of work I signed up for and what I've been doing for the last 4 years. So yeah.
Also, be prepared for all the people who are going to want to hand you a beer and just thank you along the way too.
Oh, there is that. Yeah, people when they're applauding you and you come to hook them up. Yes, that happens every day. So I admire your dedication and devotion, and that rural application you're going for is a difficult one. So I hope you wish you the best there.
Now I want to come back, and I had something that I was planning on sharing more at the beginning, and I just didn't do it because I kept talking and Deb was not getting a chance. But I feel like our conversation really came back around to where I wanted to make sure people took away, and that's this sense of what we're talking about. I think Asfi, in talking about the ag value, me talking about energy, I've been thinking a lot about telehealth. All of these things alone could probably justify building the network, and we get all these additional benefits from it. And one of the things that I think, Asfi, you bring to the table with your background in finance is that we're creating these networks that are going to generate more value for people than they cost. But we can't pay someone based on the fact that I'm going to have a better education, my life is going to be better, and I'm going to be a more productive, producer of goods and things like that in the future. And that's what you're trying to unlock, I feel like, with these bankable contracts. So that's ultimately, I feel like, the part we need to try and remember as we're trying to puzzle through how these things work. So.
Yeah, look, Chris, totally agree. I think, people often hide around household density and say America is a very big country. That's why it's hard to do. Well, I mean, Latvia is the same household density. Sweden is the same house. I mean, there's a Fiber Optic Association has a lovely map of household density and fiber penetration. There are many countries with a similar household density as America with 90 to 100% fiber penetration, South Korea including. This can be done. Taking this wire to every household is not that hard. We've got to figure out a way to get it done. It's not that expensive. It's a fight worth getting into. And yeah, I mean, it's, these contracts are things that will help us get there. But along the way, it's very hard making the contract perfectly bankable. Along the way, people also come who you get to know, and then they start taking leaps of faith saying, yeah, I'm willing to get in this. My whole effort in Sydney, Nebraska wouldn't work if Tim wasn't willing to collaborate. But, I found a willing collaborator. Something is happening. I couldn't do anything in Claxon, Oregon, but I've got Deborah, Simpier, who's collaborating. These collaborations can be built, should be built. And I believe we should take this wire to every single household in this country, pronto.
Yes, I think that's a great way to wrap up. So let's end the stream. Thank you all. Thank you for listening. And folks that have questions, you can find all our contact info. You can find my contact information at muninetworks.org. And if you're nice, I can pass along to other folks. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you, Travis. And thank you, Ryan.